Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Roland Wall. I'm the director of the Center for Environmental Policy here at the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University. I'd like to welcome you all to this month's Urban Sustainability Forum. Thank you all for turning out this evening. Tonight's program is High Tunnels, a Sustainable Solution for Local Urban Agriculture. Those of you who don't know what high tunnels are going to learn tonight. I have to admit I wasn't sure myself. But from the looks of the turnout, there apparently a lot more people knew than I did. So it's great to have you here this evening. The Urban Sustainability Forum is sponsored by a coalition of organizations and government agencies working to make Philadelphia the greenest, most livable city in America. The Academy is pleased to co-sponsor and host the forum as part of our commitment to supporting dialogue and discussion on critical issues. For those of you who are new to our programs, I hope at least some of you are, although I suspect many of you have been here before. The Academy is, of course, a museum and an environmental research center, and for over 70 years has been studying the interactions of human and natural environments. Our regular programming on sustainability, such as tonight's forum, is the logical extension of many decades of research in environmental science and ecology. As I'm sure many of you also know by now, since last year, the Academy has been an affiliate of Drexel University. Drexel shares the Academy's commitment to world-class science and sustainability, and by combining the incredible resources and expertise of these two great institutions, we're working to become the region's powerhouse for environmental research, education, and programming. Also, for those of you who haven't yet heard, 2012 is the Academy's 200th anniversary. Throughout the year, we'll be having programs, events, and special exhibit to celebrate and highlight the role of the Academy in the 3rd century. To celebrate our history and highlight the role of the Academy in the 3rd century. As part of the bicentennial in April, we'll be starting a 12-part series, New Questions for an Old Planet, that'll run this year and into the next, that will look at the challenging sustainability issues the world faces in the 21st century. Be sure and mark your calendars for June 14th. We'll be presenting one of the keynote lectures of the series featuring Dr. Paul Ehrlich, the legendary ecologist and environmental writer. Dr. Ehrlich will be presenting the keynote for the Energy and Population section of the series. Please check your printed program on our website at ansp.org for more information on what's coming up at the Academy. Tonight's Urban Sustainability Forum, as I mentioned, is about high tunnel greenhouses. As I admit, they were a new concept to me, but from what I've heard, they represent a really new, a really innovative idea for how to make best use of growing food in the city. As I say, I can see many people here do know what they are and the critical role they play in promoting urban agriculture. Tonight's program, I think, highlights another example of how the Philadelphia community is embracing new ideas to improve sustainability and quality of life. Before we get started, I want to thank several people who helped organize tonight's program. Dr. John Byrne from Penn State Extension. I want to thank the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, Sarah Wu and Catherine Gajewski for helping secure speakers. Stan LeQuire from Eastern University, who brought students to help conduct interviews of the High Tunnel Alliance members. Ed Zawara from Antonelli Art and Photography School in Chestnut Hill, whose students are tonight photographing the High Tunnel Alliance members. Dina Loeb from the City Parks Association made her book, Urban Voids, available in the Academy shop. Please stop by if you get a chance and check it out. We'll be offering one copy of the book this as a giveaway at the end of this evening, so please stick around and see if you're the lucky winner. A couple of technology notes. This program is being streamed on the internet. It's part of our commitment to bring programming to people around the city and around the world. We'll also be streaming our upcoming program, Reimagining Urban Highways, on February 23rd. As many of you know, we're also now on Twitter. The information for following us on Twitter at CPANSP is on your program. If you're tweeting about tonight's event, please use the hashtag that's also on your program. For those of you who are not yet members of the Academy, I hope that's very few of you, let me urge you to consider joining. Membership is very important for us to present these great programs. It also gives a lot of opportunities for the members. We have membership information available in the lobby or also on our website at ansp.org. Finally, let me thank our generous supporters and donors, including the William Penn Foundation and the Environmental Associates of the Academy. Also like to again thank our speakers and panelists for taking the time to join us, all of the partner organizations of the Urban Sustainability Forum, and of course all of you for being here with us tonight, especially as this is an unusual night for the forum. We're usually on Thursdays. We were concerned having it on a Wednesday might affect the turnout, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Next month's forum in March will be on Thursday again, March 15th, or back to a regular Thursday night, and is entitled Taking the Pulse of Our Commercial Buildings Using Utility Data to Jumpstart an Energy Efficient Economy. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening. Jerome Shabazz is Executive Director of the Overbrook Environmental Education Center and an educator with Penn State Extension. Please join me in welcoming Jerome Shabazz.
Good evening. The Academy, we want to thank Roland Walls and the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University one more time. Can we give them a round of applause? The Academy is an established and proven leader in innovation, science, and sustainability, not only in our region but around the world. So we're very grateful that we were able to hold this forum here tonight, dealing with a local issue that's very important to all of us. High tunnels, a sustainable solution for local urban agriculture. 10 years ago, who would have thought that we would be out on a Wednesday night in the heart of winter talking about local food production? But here we are. And we're here for a wonderful purpose, an innovative reason. Yet, many of us still are unfamiliar with many of the technologies that are available to us to enable us to carry out this objective. We're fortunate tonight to have some wonderful guests to talk about the technology, the local ordinances from city government, as well as from the EPA, to enable us to better understand how we can engage in establishing food production in an urban community. But before we introduce our guests, we'd like to thank some of the people who are instrumental in helping this forum come together. Erin Johnson, who's a program manager here at the Academy of Natural Sciences, with her colleagues Sarah Steele and Kimberly Ellis. We'd like to give them a round of applause for helping to put this together, because they quietly work behind the scenes, but we're very appreciative of the work that they do. We also want to thank our colleagues and friends at Penn State Extensions, Bob Pearson, Darrell Henderson, Doris Stahl, Heather Zimmerman, John Burns, Kim Labno, Suzanne Weltman, Tommy McCain, and Bill Schick were part of the planning committee that enabled us to pull this forum together. We also want to thank our High Tunnel Alliance members. If you came in today and you noticed the people with the tables who had exhibits, they were part of a group of High Tunnel Alliance members, and we also want to thank them for their participation. Grumblethorpe Historic House, the Methodist Family Services, Overbrook Environmental Education Center, Saul High School, Henry Got Crops, Urban Girl Produce at the Schuylkill Center Farm, Share, Nice Roots Farm, Enterprise Center, Walnut Hill Farm, the Federation of Neighborhood Centers, Team for Good, Urban Tree Connection, and Weaver's Way, Mort Brooks Memorial Farms. We want to begin with our first speaker, Dr. Bill Lamont, who is a professor at Penn State University, Department of Agriculture, Horticulture. He is a very, I would like to call him a pioneer of high tunnel development. Very engaging, very informative. We want you to give him your utmost attention because I think you will really, really enjoy his presentation. But before we bring Bill Lamont up, we also have Eva Glasstein, from Executive Director of the Zoning Code Commission, City of Philadelphia. Thank you for being out today. Thomas McCade III, Executive Director of Development Services, Department of License and Inspection. Thank you very much. And Dr. Jonathan Essica of the U.S. Department of Environmental Protection, Brownfields and Land Revitalization. So we want to thank all of our guests, and with no further ado, here's Dr. Bill Lamont.
Thank you, Jerome. It's a It's a real pleasure to be here tonight and talk about a subject that I'm passionate about, and I think that you are all passionate about in the audience. How many in the audience eat every day? Okay, that's a good start. We're off on the right foot, because I haven't really found anybody that doesn't, and what we're going to talk about tonight is eating, growing produce, education, and a lot of other things. So I'm going to get into it. Let me see. There, I'm getting into it. Okay, the High Tunnel Alliance is sort of pulls together all the high tunnel producers in the city. And this is something it's good that John Burns and the Extension Office got them together so they could talk amongst themselves and interact. But there's so many people that are part of it. You know, John Burns and Extension in Philadelphia County, USDA, PDA, Pennsylvania Department of Ag, growers associated with numerous organizations in the city, governmental entities are involved, and others to expand the usage of high tunnels in the metropolitan area, and we're talking about Philadelphia. So a lot of other people. Bruce Dye, my research associate, who was one of the ones that was taken out in the budget cuts at Penn State. He was instrumental, as many of you know that worked with him, instrumental in helping us get the tunnels put up in Philadelphia. And Bruce was a good man, and I miss working with him. High tunnels are, man, when I talk about the Crescent, and I'm talking about from Flint all the way around to Philadelphia, every one of these metropolitan areas has a lot of energy and a lot of excitement going on. Just recently at the Hershey, the Mid-Atlantic Fruit and Vegetable meeting in Hershey, a gentleman from Cleveland showed his presentation on what's going on in Cleveland in urban agriculture. Right with the skyline of Cleveland, high tunnels, urban agriculture. So it's a powerful, great, exciting movement that's going on. And we come right through Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, and Philadelphia. And there's high tunnels in all those areas. Philadelphia, you know this. How many know your statistics on your own city here? The 5th largest city in the United States. That's great, man. 1.5 million people we can talk to. Then you get school districts, all the students we can educate about why food's important, why is important for nutrition, for health, to fight diabetes, obesity. And then Philadelphia has 8 PA senators and 28 representatives. So there's a lot of political clout in Philadelphia. And that's important because they need to understand why food's important to their constituents and what we're trying to do as part of the extension and research at Penn State. Other colleges, University of Pennsylvania, Temple, Drexel, LaSalle, St. Joe's, Villanova, and others, they're located in the city. There's partners. There's educational expertise that can be pulled together with Penn State to work in this area of urban agriculture. Why is Penn State in Philadelphia? The president of Penn State asked that question sometimes when we got all these other universities. Well, Penn State is the land-grant university. We have the mandate to work with agricultural producers throughout the state, and that includes Philadelphia. So that's why we're here, but we partner with a lot of other people. So we work with our agricultural extension, our agricultural research, but the other schools, they're involved and they have community outreach. Some of it's agriculture, some of it's in other areas. So they're doing community outreach. We started up in Penn State in 1998 with our first high tunnels that we put up with a grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. And then we have additional high tunnels located around the state with our county educators. We grow vegetables, small fruits, flowers, and then our produce was marketed in the cellar market. This is the setup. We have about 30 tunnels up there. And of course, when we downsize, the tunnels don't downsize, so now we got to figure out what to do with the excess tunnels that we have up there. The cellar market early in the springtime because we thought it's important to educate students on marketing. You can grow a lot of stuff, but you got to market it. You got to know how to talk people. You got to know how to give change. So we wanted them to learn how to market. How do you talk to customers? What about ethnic vegetables? What are they? I never saw this. What's a loofah gourd, you know? So a lot of that. Back in 2002, when Sam Hayes was the Secretary of Agriculture, that's when we started in tunnels with Saul High School back in 2002. Put the first high tunnel up. I can remember putting it. Doris was there. Doris, cold. Remember, Doris, how cold it was? It was cold. So we never come down to Philadelphia anymore in the wintertime to put tunnels up. But it served as an educational opportunity for the students at Saul, and now they have a CSA there. We need to go back there and revisit and rework with them with the tunnel, but the tunnel is to educate the students at Saul High School, and it's a great institution. This is Saul's high tunnel. It was a 17 by 36, which is one of the sizes that we put up. That's what a high tunnel looks like. Current partners, Jerome went through them. There they are. A lot of different partners that we're working with on the high tunnels, and you can read them there. Really interesting, really exciting. Everybody does things a little differently, but that's the fun. That's the fabric. That's the tapestry of horticulture. It's not one thread. It's a lot of threads weaved together to make a tapestry. And more of them, and maybe some of our next generation partners, and I've talked to other people, and the extension educators, John, Jerome, Heather, Doris, and the others, they got people on the list of where we want to partner to work with you on tunnels in your facility, whether it has a youth component, whether it has an elderly component. A lot of different opportunities. A lot of other people involved in high tunnels and the planning of what is the city going to look like in the future? What are we going to do with the vacant land that we have? And you can see down through, and then I put many, many more. I always said to John Burns, we need a big table when we sit as a partner with the high tunnels and urban agriculture, because there's a lot of entities that come together that all have an interest in this area, and they all bring a piece of the pie to the table so we have a pie, and that's what's important. Funding came from the USDA, Department of Ag, Specialty Crop Block Grants for the current work we're doing, a great program. I hope the USDA keeps it. It gives us an opportunity to use the money locally for the purchase of the tunnels, the travel, the erection of them, labor to do it, and things like that. So it was great. We're probably going back for another grant for it, because the young lady that runs it, Leila Reichert, she likes the work we do. She saw it. She visited down here. She actually saw it. She saw boots on the ground in Philadelphia impacting people's lives. The tunnels, Nice Root Farms, Teens for Good, Heritage Farm, Urban Girls, Grumblethorpe, Neighborhood Food Farms, Walnut Hills. We're going to start with Nice Roots. This is what Nice Roots, I always tell them, you want to go to Nice Roots, go to the old Tasty Baking Company. And people like that, you know, oh, the Tasty Baking, look at that big building in there, you know. This is what it looked like. I'm going to run you through the steps. This is what it looked. They had raised beds. Makes it a little more difficult when you got raised beds there already and you're going to put a tunnel over top of it, but we're flexible. Bill Chick, working hard. Anybody that works in the urban area knows some stuff was bulldozed over. There might be a concrete foundation underneath there. Well, that's what we run into a lot of times. You drive the ground post in. Well, we can't drive them in because there's something there. So then you get the drill. And Bill knows his shins are all dinged up probably still from that thing swinging loose and hitting him on the shin. But that's the way we've drilled a pre-hole to put the ground post in, and that's what holds the tunnels in place. Bruce Dye and Bill, and again, you can see the ground post going in there. Every 4 foot, a ground post. And this is a 30-foot wide tunnel. Ground posts are going down pretty deep, so we had a job. Then you put the bows together. It's like building a big erector set. It's not rocket science. I mean, I can do it, you can do it. No problem. Don't worry about it. We put the bows together. We put the bows in the ground post. And we got bolts, so you got a lot of electric drills, you got bolts, you know, and you tighten up the nuts, not too tight, you don't want to break it. So you get the bows going up, we're doing good. Look, it's starting to look like something. And man, a great crew to work with. You got to have people to work with. And they were a great crew to go ahead and work. And you can see we got all the bows up. It's starting to look like something now, right? Right? Thought I lost them already, Jerome. Okay. And it always helps to have a good carpenter, you know, somebody that can cut a straight line on a board or, you know, go ahead and frame your end walls. That's always a good thing. I value a good carpenter. So, you know, having good carpenters at the site to put the baseboards and the wood on, that's good. Bill Schick, OSHA. Anybody from OSHA in here? The girls were hanging on the ladder real tight because they didn't want Bill to fall and be hanging up there, but he was doing a little bit of work. We had to get the purlins up there, which go along the length of it, but Bill was doing good. And there you can see we got the purlins up, and he's got his crops covered for the winter. You know, it's getting chilly at night. You know, it's starting to get, and he's got his end wall framed. End wall framing looks like a house, and I've never seen an end wall that was framed the same. So now he's putting on the hip board going along the side there, and there it is. It's all done. Voila! Hey, a high tunnel. What's it look like? A greenhouse. That's right. I had a reporter interview me for an hour. I told her all about high tunnels. The title was High tunnel's a poor man's greenhouse. I missed it. I was poor communicator. High tunnel is a season extension, extending the season, earlier in the spring, later in the fall. Or winter production, as you know, if you've talked to the High Tunnel Alliance producers, they're producing crops right now as we speak. So they're a season extension technology. Very simple, roll the sides up, roll the sides down. That controls your environment. There's no heating in them. There's no electrical, no automated ventilation. And then you go ahead and have irrigation, mainly drip irrigation for your watering. Bill's mom. That's how Bill grows crops. He works his mom. But that shows you the crop production. You're protecting the crop from the rain. Rain causes diseases. You're protecting it, you're extending the season, higher quality, no dirt, rain splashing on it, no dirt, better crops. Peppers, how many like peppers in here? Raise your hand. How many grow peppers in here? Whew, man, okay, close. I always say that's the first law of economics. If more hands go up that grow it than eat it, we're in trouble. But outside now, Bill had the first tunnel, a 30 by, I forget what it was, 60, something like that. So he decided to put a 21. So here you can see the 21 going up now, next to it. This is his winter production. Again, winter production is in production right now as we speak in Philadelphia. You can get fresh vegetables, greens. You're not going to get tomatoes. You're not going to get peppers. You're not going to get squash, but you can get collards, kale. You can get some of the root crops sometimes, just depending. There it is, a house full of your greens, your cabbages, and things like that. So, great. The second high tunnel going up, what? Okra. Look at that okra under there. Now, that was there before we put the tunnel up. But again, 21 going up right next to it. We allow enough room when it snows. Has it snowed down here at all? No, not much this year, but we leave room. Senator Hughes' staff came by to visit, and that was nice to show them what we're doing. What is going on? What is agriculture doing in Philadelphia? So the senator knows what agriculture is going on in his district as far as feeding people. This is Nice Roots Farm, a lot of service activities with high schools. Great. Kids coming in, doing service projects surrounded by the tunnel. If it's a rainy day, do you want to be out in your garden? Do you want to be in the tunnel? There you go. You go to Florida, you don't have to now. You go in the tunnel. Signage. You got to advertise. You have to advertise what you're doing. The people involved, the partners, you got to advertise. You got to put up your educational and your advertising materials, and that's what that is. Here's a young man learning entrepreneurship. Here he is, learning how to sell produce. You know, you think about it. Opportunities for agricultural occupations in the city of Philadelphia. Think of it. Think of it. What a dynamic thing. And there he is. He made the sale. Customer's happy. He's happy. He probably retired. Teens for Good. There's the L. What is it, Jamie, in back of you? The regional rail over top. So people wave to us. We're working away. They wave as they go by. So again, we had to drill. We thought, a Reckin Park site. Nice, deep topsoil. We drove the first ground post. It came up with red stuff on the bottom of it. Bricks. Bricks. Okay, get the drill out again. Yep, there we go. Bruce doing it there. Bruce is working on it. Then we get the ground post in again. Jamie and the crew working on putting the, see, they're working, they're just putting the bows together. You got a group putting the bows together, a group doing the ground post. Voila, and I think there's a school across the street. So you got a tennis court, people playing tennis, seeing what we're doing, wondering what we're doing. They're playing tennis. But the tunnel, this is 30 foot again, 30 foot wide. The fixed tunnels are 30 foot wide, all the way from 12 foot to 30 foot on a fixed tunnel. Takes partners to make it happen. I can't put the tunnel up myself. I need partners. I need people to help work on the tunnels. And it's fun, isn't it, Jamie? Don't lie. And a lot of tall ladders help, or tall people on tall ladders. But again, it's gone up relatively short period of time, probably on the 30-footer, maybe about 5 days if we work at it all the time. It takes time. I'm not going to tell you that they go up in a day or two. But again, we're putting the end walls on, and here's the kids in. They're watering the crop. We got a crop in there, in the ground. Now, most of the time, they'll be on raised beds. A lot of times we recommend raised beds just because we don't know what the soil condition is underneath of it. So we do raised beds. But here they're in the ground at the 8th and Poplar site, high tunnel up, big vent there to vent it. And here's the crew. Leela came down and visited. She wanted to see the tunnels, see what the money's being spent on, and we took her around, gave her the tour. And, Heather from the Extension Service, Richard, who's a very handy man over at Grumblethorpe, a great, great guy. And then Henry and Leela and Jamie in front of the tunnel. That's what a 30-foot wide tunnel looks like. Again, over at 8th and Poplar. So it's a great thing there. This is Urban Girl Produce out at the Schuylkill Environmental Center. Gina Humphreys, she grew tomatillas in there. There was a whole house of tomatillas in there. So you can grow a lot of. Some people put chickens in there. I mean, it just depends. I had an idea of putting sheep in there, but I didn't get that far yet. This is Gina selling produce. Again, just the marketing of fresh produce, that is the key. Grumblethorpe. The thing I like about Grumblethorpe, it's nestled right in. You're in there. You're tight. There's a school in the back you can see in the background. There's houses over here, and the homestead. The homestead is up front there. So we get to working again. The same gig. Once you do one, you can do 20 of them. No problem. You just keep working. And again, a crew, and Carl's in there. Carl helped us a lot on the tunnels there. Again, a nice crew, good people come out, guys that maybe can run a drill and drill a hole and stuff. And we're putting up a 21 wide. We get the hip board up there, which is the piece that Bruce has his hand hanging on. And we're going along there, and then put the channel locks on that hold the plastic in place. We put the end wall, and everybody does end walls a little different. One of different size door there, Jerome. You want a big door, small door. I call it the money door. For those that are producing crops for money, that's your money door. That's where you go in, pick something, and come out and sell it. That's the money door, so you got a door. But again, you put in a door and put in a vent because you got a vent. Philadelphia does get warm in the summer, right? You're about going to keep ambient temperature maybe. And it can get warm, but that's why we have the ventilation up at the top, and then on the sides we roll up. Different ways of doing your end walls. You can use the plywood, some of them completely plywood, some just a piece of plywood. Plywood on the other end. Plastic, 6 mil greenhouse grade plastic. Nothing magical about it, just good greenhouse grade plastic. Lasts you about 4 or 5 years, probably until you change it. Some of the scrim stuff will probably go 7 years. You got a little bit longer life on it. But a single layer, not a double layer. Although some growers put double layers on it, they put heat in it, they do everything, and they call it a high tunnel. And the code people, I'm not saying anything about the code people. That's up to you to deal with. But anyway, they were going along, and here we are. We got it finished up, got it almost finished up, and then Richard did it, spruced it up, and that's what the one at Grumblethorpe, a 21-foot wide. Nice size, and they're doing a lot of good stuff. They built benches because they do a lot of educational programs for kids. So your tunnel may be used a little differently. You got to have some bench space for the kids and little beds where they can work. So everybody uses the tunnel in a different manner. It just depends, what your interest is. Some people will be strictly producing to sell to a restaurant or a market. Others will do education. A lot of different types of opportunities to use the tunnels. They're very, very versatile. That's the thing I like about them. And I like this because the kids are there. They just come through the gate. You open the gate up, little kids come marching through to go to do a class, and now they can do a class on vegetables. Why do potatoes grow in ground? Why do potatoes have eyes? Do potatoes breathe? I'm a potato guy. You can tell, right? But potatoes are good. So a lot of different things. They're learning about science. There's science behind agriculture. The farmer is probably one of the most professional people there are. Think of all the things they have to do. And you as urban agriculturists, you have to do all those things too. How many professions do you have to be a chemist and a businessman? You can do one good probably. A farmer does them all. And that's why it's important to teach people the science and what's behind growing crops. They just don't show up at ShopRite on the store shelf. No way. There's a lot of stuff goes in there between the growing and ShopRite. So education to me is a passion. And I think the kids, I see young people in there, that boy's sleeping. Hey, wake up there. But whoa. My students are like that too. Yeah, my students do that. I've seen that before, the old eye trick. Yeah, I know what you're doing. Okay, I caught them. But Heather and Leela, and you can see the tomatoes in there, so they use it a little differently. You know, they're using it for education with the kids, so the setup's a little different. The size of the beds and everything are set up a little different. Gives a lot of versatility. His eyes are open good now. And they have chickens. I love that. Chickens, you know, having chickens, you know, that's great. Farming in the city, having chickens and produce. You can take the produce that maybe is not good, you throw it and give it to the chickens, right? And the chickens eat it. So you're recycling in the greatest sense of the word. So that's important. Heritage Farm over there at the old Methodist Center. Boy, I tell you what, 221 by 96. These are big boys. These are big tunnels. They take a little bit more work. But that's two of them right there, and the potential is that there could be more tunnels there. You start with two. And I always said the nice thing about a tunnel is you can start with one and maybe have it 21 by 48. And if you like it, you just add more bows. Take the end wall off and add more bows on it and extend the length of it. So the end walls, putting the end walls on them there, you can see big doors here to drive equipment in there. You know, you can drive. We use little tractors with rototillers behind it or a walk-behind rototiller. Again, the end walls are going on there. Vents on the top, you can see. Vince McCaffrey and Tomorrow's Promise. Is Vince in the audience here at all? Anybody with Tomorrow's Promise in here? Okay. But boy, I tell you what, I never, in all my years and visits to growers, I never saw an end wall crafted like that. That is remarkable. I mean, if we get a hurricane or a tornado, the end wall will be there. The tunnel will be gone. Unbelievable carpentry. I mean, to encase the pipe, Jerome, encase the pipe around the wood around it. What a craftsman. I mean, it cost you $1 million, but it was good. But what a skill, teaching kids skill sets like that, which we need that. We need it in the tunnels. You know, it's all part of carpentry. These are the long tunnels. You can see them. You know, they roll the sides up. We tie them down with strapping. It's sort of like your beach chair strapping. That holds the sides from going like this on you. So that works good. Yeah, you got to get up high to get this shot, and then you can shoot right along there. Methodist Center has a lot of nice land there doing the outdoor production, the tunnel production. And here's the fall crops going in. You know, you start crops in the fall, you mature them, and you use the tunnel as a refrigerator. The tunnel in the wintertime is like a refrigerator. You're storing your crop, harvesting individual leaves or heads. You don't really start growing things in the dead of the winter sometimes, but you're harvesting them. And that's what they're doing here. They're getting the crops ready on raised beds. You can see plenty of room to work. Get your wheelbarrow in there. You want to remember, you got to give the crop spacing in there because you got to give them a little room. Sarah and Heather and Leela and Rich looking over the crops there. And these are the ones I like, the little kids. They're the ones I want to touch. I want to teach the kids and make them the wonder in their eyes when they see plants grow. Because it's a living thing. Think of the miracle of a seed germinating and growing. A miracle. That's a miracle. And for you to go ahead and observe and work with that miracle every day is great. Now, you want to sell that miracle down the line, too, if you're in it for production, but still, it's a miracle regardless. But the little kids are great. They love to see produce being out. And in the tunnel, if it's a rainy day, the teacher can bring them out anyway. You'd be in the tunnel, it's not raining, right, Jerome? It's dry. That's what I love about it. You never get a break. You never stop working. Over at the Urban Tree Connection with Ryan. Ryan took the tunnel, put it up. He's good. He can put his tunnel up. He doesn't need a lot of supervision, a few questions, and he's on his way. So he's got it up over there, and here's Ryan and his group, and they did a good job. You see their end walls. Everybody does them a little different. So they, again, great partners. A nice piece of ground there to go ahead and have CSAs, looking at having CSAs, different levels of CSAs to go ahead and a low income and a moderate income. A lot of really interesting marketing concepts and ways to get produce to people. That's what we want to do at the end of the day. This is over at the, probably the smallest one, the 14 by 20 over at Walnut Hills. Walnut Hills has a booth out there, a small one. The smaller ones are harder to control the environment because the area inside is much smaller. It's a much more dramatic change in the environment within them. So the larger you can go, the better if you have the area to work with. But again, 14 by 20 going up over there. And again, set in there, outdoor production, tunnel, growing crops, a lot of different things there. Recommended growing systems, I like the raised beds just primarily because I don't really know what the material that we're putting the tunnel over might be. Is there residual things in there we need to be worried about? You can remediate soil, but I'll be a great-grandfather by the time we remediate some of these sites maybe, because I just don't know what was bulldozed under, pushed in there. But raised beds work well. Greens, where they're thick as a dog, hair on the dog's back there, you just go down and harvest them. Fresh greens, man, in Philadelphia, fresh greens, good nutritious greens. And the greens, I tell you what, the quality of the material that we have today, the seed companies, the quality. I remember when I was growing up, we had iceberg lettuce and maybe bib lettuce and leaf lettuce. And not much of it. Now you got mesclun mixes, you got all types of textures, flavors. Man, pumpkins is another one. But you don't want to grow pumpkins in the tunnel, trust me. Probably not a good idea, unless you want to impress your neighbors. But greens, I would say all your greens, all your types of crops, raised beds, make them wide enough that you can bend over comfortably one side, maybe 4 foot. You don't want to make them so that you're falling over into the bed. And if you get older like me, you want to be able to sort of bend gracefully, get up back, get your back straightened up and go to the other side. So anyway, raised beds, 4 foot's a good one. You'll notice that we have spent irrigation tubing there. We put covers over the beds in the tunnel. So we have a tunnel within a tunnel. Every layer of plastic or material that you put takes you a growing degree zone further south. So some people are probably in North Carolina and don't realize it. Here in Philadelphia. Keep that in mind. So I'll see North Carolina signs down here and I'll wonder what is going on. Marketing, that's what I love, marketing. I'm a business major. I took my first degree in business and economics. And then I saw horticulture. I saw the light, Jerome. I was destined to be a banker at the Frankfurt Bank and Trust until the war came in the 60s and I completely changed gears. But anyway, marketing is fun. Go ahead and raspberries the size of quarters, John. Raspberries. They're a good crop. Remember, every crop horticulturally is labor intensive. I've never seen a melon jump up in my basket. Now, if you gals can do it down here, you got it. Red, white, and blue potatoes. You get the red, white, and blue potatoes. Potatoes have a lot of different colors. You know that, kids? You know that? You knew that? Boy, they're sharp kids down here. But, there's a lot of colors. So you can market them, put them together. We made a flag. We called it the Spud flag. Using potatoes, we made the American flag. And we should have trademarked it, Jerome. We wouldn't be here tonight. Another lost opportunity. Flowers. How many like flowers in here? Oh, flowers. Europeans, they grow a lot of flowers. The only time we use flowers over here is if you've been bad and you have to take flowers to your wife or something. No, but flowers, and the thing about flowers is that you go ahead and after a rainstorm or a thunderstorm, you see what a tunnel can do for you flower-wise production. Protect those snapdragons. Protect your flowers. So flowers are good. Grace the table with flowers, more flowers. Use your little bit of a spring mix, you can have your early red potatoes. They're the ones that make money, I'll tell you that right now. Little round white ones in the spring don't make money. Little red ones make money. Chefs like those little red ones. And then you can go ahead and some sugar snaps, maybe pull some onions, some strawberries, and you have your spring package. And you market them together, put the colors and the contrast together. It's all how you arrange it, right, Doris? You got to play the colors and the textures. That's the nice thing about vegetables. It's not like Campbell's soup. I mean, how much difference between split pea and tomato? Notice what you look at when you go to the store. You don't look at the crops there. Here's what vegetables. Here's what you can grow. We've grown all these. We have people down here growing them. You can go from garlic to broccoli to okra to collards to kale to spinach to asparagus to zucchinis, you name it. I always said you can grow anything if you can market it, or else you smell it. It's the old adage. But a lot of things. Would I grow the gourds down here? No, unless I wanted an indicator crop. When the vines went outside and you had a frost, you knew they died. It was cold that night. You're wasting your money to put those in there. But you can grow anything, like I said. You know, cucumbers. This one, what's this one? Anybody know what that one is? Lemongrass. Who said that? Raise your hand. Yep, there you go. That's good, lemongrass. So lemongrass is a good one. Thai restaurants love fresh lemongrass, so you got it, and it commands a good price. So herbs, a lot of different herbs, a lot of different types of materials. And then, of course, the potatoes. I grow potatoes because I like to have them before the 4th of July, get them up, get them early, get a good price for them. And done. Using the little red ones, the red, white, blue. Onions so big you have to use a truck to get them out of the tunnel. That's how big they get. Just remember, you're going to have to buy a truck. That's a big expense for the tunnel, but trust me. So anyway, you can grow onions, the sweet Spanish onions. We grow a lot of those. The sweet Spanish, they go real well. So you can grow a lot of onions in there. Small fruits. Kathy Demchek, our small fruits extension person. She's good, and I drug her screaming. Mike and I drug her screaming into high tunnels, but she's glad she did it. But raspberries, you know, you can get raspberries from the early on in the summer all the way to the end. Blackberries, this is my son when he was younger. Blackberries, a wall of blackberries, you know, blackberries, raspberries, good crops. Strawberries down here, you can get a lot of strawberries. We use row covers on them, a lot of different things. So a lot of you can do in the small fruit area too. And they're another good crop for your tunnels. The flowers, just a myriad of flowers. You know, if you're into the flowers, you can do the bouquets and sell the bouquets or whatever. But cut flowers is another good area. And if restaurants want to have them to put on the tables, you can be the supplier. Tree fruits, probably, I don't know how many are going to do tree fruits, but Greg Lang in Michigan State's the tree fruit person that I look to. He's been doing cherries, and he has some cherries about this size, about that size cherry. Greg has really done a fabulous job. I think the other one that would be a big ticket item would be apricots. Apricots and cherries are my two candidates for a tunnel. But you need a big tunnel. You need a good sized tunnel, but they would be ones to do. If I give you an idea of a 21 by 96 foot tunnel, and you can think about this, tomatoes, you get 15 to 20 pounds per plant. You're probably going to get around 5, maybe push 6,000 pounds of tomatoes. And you got to remember, you got to sell 6,000 pounds of tomatoes. You can grow them, right? But you got to sell them. Peppers, you know, 8 to 10 pounds per plant, maybe 10,640 pounds of peppers in a tunnel. In a small one, a 17 by 36, you're probably looking at like 800, 900 pounds of peppers in a small one. Eggplants. How many like eggplants? Good. Eggplant's a good crop. Not much flavor. Does good. Put it in with something. Yeah, but they got a lot of colors now. They got white ones. They got, you know, when I grew up with the old Epic, you know, that was all we had. Now you got all types of, you know, really neat stuff. So eggplants, 3 to 4 pounds per plant, you know, 3,900, almost 4,000 pounds of eggplant. So that's a lot of eggplant parmesan, Jerome. Lettuce and spinach, yeah, 2,400 pounds of the greens maybe. The spinach in the tunnel. Strawberries, we try to shoot for 1.5 pounds per plant in there, so maybe almost 2,000 pounds of strawberries. And then brambles, maybe 950 pounds, something along those lines in there. Give you an idea of what we're talking about, because I always said the first thing you do if you're a producer is you think marketing. Then you work yourself backwards. So, and with that, it's been a quick run through of tunnels and what they can do. And the High Tunnel Alliance people are your resource, and John Burns in the Extension office, and Jerome and Heather and Doris and everybody, and Christine and Heather, they're all the ones that you need to contact. So with that, I am glad that I was able to give you that lecture. Remember, think food. Think education. I almost shirked my responsibility. I got to introduce the next person behind me. Sorry, Eva. Eva Gladstein serves as the Executive Director of the 31-member Philadelphia Zoning Code Commission. Gladstein formerly served as Director of Special Projects for the City of Philadelphia Commerce Department, where her primary responsibility was managing and implementing of economic opportunity plans. I like that. To increase city's utilization of minority, women, and disabled-owned businesses. Eva, we welcome you to the podium.
It's not an easy act to follow, I will just say. And I'm talking about a dry subject. I'm talking about the zoning code. Let me see if is my presentation, oh, there we go, okay. How many of you even know what a zoning code is and does? Yay, everybody? Okay. Basically, it's a set of city rules and a map that tells you what you can build where, how high it can be, the separation, the use on the lot, and all those good things. And the city just recently had the experience, a 4-year experience of drafting a new zoning code for the first time in, for the first time in about 50 years. Thank you. And so it was about a 4-year process with a 31-member commission, and we're all very glad it's over, or part of it's over. We have a brand spanking new zoning code that was signed into law in December, which goes into effect in August, on August 22nd. I've been joking to people today that I'm not going to be in town that day, and I'm not answering my phone that day. When we make the transition from the current zoning code to the new zoning code. But one of the reasons I'm here tonight is that as we started to work on the zoning code, we took into account what kind of a city do we want to be in the future and how to have a zoning code that can promote the kind of future we want. The zoning code that's in effect today is a zoning code that was developed in 1962, and the world's a very different place, and our economy at that time was largely based on or starting to decline from manufacturing, but we didn't know about high tunnels. And we didn't know about urban agriculture as an example. So we tried to create a zoning code that would address our current land uses and also promote sustainability for the future and flexibility. And so the 3 ways we could do that, because zoning can't, it's not going to improve the soil or, make the economy of a market work better or worse. But we thought we could remove some of the obstacles that exist in the current zoning code. We thought we could help promote some activities, and we also thought we could provide some incentives. And so we tried to do those 3 things for a range of sustainability activities throughout the zoning code, and urban agriculture was one of those. The current zoning code does not know what urban agriculture is. It doesn't know what a community garden is. It doesn't know what a greenhouse is. And so if you were to go and apply for a zoning permit or to try to put up a structure for urban agriculture or a community garden, and you actually went to try to pull a permit, you would get refused. You would have to go through an appeal process because the code does not recognize it right now. So, so the new zoning code does recognize urban agriculture, and I'm going to first show you what we did about high tunnels and then talk to you about 2 other provisions because I think you'll have an interest in them, and it's kind of short and simple. So, am I going backwards? Let's try it this way. Okay. So we do have high tunnels in the new zoning code, and thank you to the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and Sarah, who's here in the audience. They are not called high tunnels. They're called accessory agricultural structures. So first of all, since you're the folks who are going to be doing this, you should know where to look. And they're in a section of the zoning code which has standards for what we call accessory uses and structures. It means it's not the principal building or the principal use on the lot, but it's an accessory to some other activity that's happening. And so any of the various names, and I don't even know the nuance of if a cold frame or a hoop house or a high tunnel would be different, or they're all the same. But what we did is to name them in the zoning code in that section 146049. And at the end, you'll see our website, so you'll know how to find that. And then we did two things. We tried to define some as temporary structures, because as a temporary structure, you would not have to pull a permit, and you'd be subject to fewer of the conditions in the zoning code. So I don't know how many high tunnels this would apply to in the city, but if it's a temporary structure, which is 100, it's basically 6 months or less that it's up, we are allowing it to kind of violate parts of the zoning code that other buildings or structures would be required to meet, so a house or a garage. They would be permitted in a side and a rear yard, which is typically not true of a structure, but that have to be 20 feet away from the lot line, and the maximum height would be 18 feet. So that's kind of a provision that we put there to enable some high tunnels to exist with kind of a minimum of fuss and code enforcement from the city of Philadelphia, if it works. If it's a permanent structure for more than 180 days, it's going to have to comply with the zoning code, which simply just means that you're going to have to, and I don't think that would be a problem for the high tunnel, but it means you'll have to have the proper setbacks, front yard, rear yard, side yards. You'd have to meet the height requirements, which you should not have a problem with, because the usual height requirement is 38 feet. So that's how we address them anyway. But the fact that they're in the zoning code means that when you do go to the Department of Licenses and Inspections, they will know what you're talking about. There'll be a place for them to refer to in the zoning code, so they can address your questions. So that's kind of on the narrow issue, that brought you here tonight of high tunnels, but I think it's just as important to share with you what else we did about urban agriculture, because again, this has been sort of a mystery since it's not addressed in the current zoning code. So we do recognize we have different types of uses that are permitted in different kinds of zoning districts throughout the code, and we have recognized actually 4 different types of urban agriculture in the zoning code, ranging from a community garden to a market or CSA farm to a greenhouse, horticulture use to animal husbandry. And again, in the new zoning code, you will be able to look at tables that show what uses are permitted, and you will know whether or not in the particular area where your lot is, whether or not it's a permitted use. And so that's new, and again, should simplify the process of having a garden in the city. We also have some standards that we put in to make sure you're good neighbors, about where the compost is, about how much noise at night, and other good things, some buffering potentially from neighbors. But again, it's the first time ever that we've had this in the code, so it'd be great for you guys to look at it and review it and know it, and not be scared of getting a zoning permit, because you'll be able to. And then the second thing we did, and I'm just focusing right now on access to local food, is that we actually, those first 2 were examples of kind of removing obstacles and promoting certain uses. We're trying to actually create incentives for access to local food. And the way we did that is if there are markets that have fresh food, and we have a definition in the zoning code, we're actually relaxing certain standards for that, for markets with fresh food. We're reducing the amount of parking that's required, and we're actually permitting more height or more bulk in the zoning code if the use meets our definition, which is really fresh food. It's not any market. It's a fresh food market. So again, that might be, as you're thinking about what you're growing and marketing and selling it, this should be another support to you. And let me just tell you kind of this is how to contact us. I'd really encourage you to go up onto our website, which is zoningmatters.org. You can download whatever part of the 400-page zoning code you want to, but it's searchable. If you look up urban agriculture, you can get right to it. If you look up accessory agricultural structures, you can get to high tunnels, and you can see what we've written about. And believe me, as daunting as this may be, it's less daunting and less confusing than the current zoning code that is what you all have been working with up until now. Again, the new zoning code's going into effect in August, and if you want to pay attention to the process, you can stay tuned to our website. We're working on a number of things to implement the new zoning code. One thing that the Planning Commission is doing is starting to do plans for each district in the city and looking to make sure the zoning map, which says what zoning district applies where, is appropriate, and looking at revisions to the zoning map. And also we're creating new regulations to help implement parts of the zoning code. So one of the things I learned in doing this work is that as geeky as this zoning code is, it really affects our lives every day. And you've probably hit up against it in the work you do. It's usually hitting up against it, not with it. So our goal throughout this process is to be a little bit more aligned with being with you rather than kind of against this kind of use. It's something that the Zoning Code Commission really valued, and we're just hoping we got it right. And I think you are an activist enough group that you will let us know if we did not get it right. So we had a lot of input from people about community gardens and market farms and CSAs and high tunnels during the process, so you were well represented. And with that, I have the honor of introducing a colleague of mine from the city of Philadelphia, and that's Tom McDade, who's Executive Director of the Development Services Group. And Tom's going to tell you how great the building code is also.
Good evening, folks. So who are we at L&I and what is our role? Well, we are, thank you, Dr. Lamont, we are the code people. So what is our role? At L&I, we will look at the structures for, and in this case, the high tunnel, for code compliance. Okay, we'll interpret the code and enforce the code. And in this case, we're looking at the zoning code, we're looking at the building code, and we're looking at the fire code. Okay, the zoning code, and I thought I was going to have nothing but great news to share with you until Dr. Lamont went on and on about all the different uses and things that we could do with this, and I had to throw a couple different pieces in. The zoning code, as long as it meets the criteria set by EVA and the zoning code, then we will not require a zoning permit. Okay, and they were the things that we showed up on the board, and specifically that and let me just read from the code here. L&I shall not require a zoning permit for an accessory agricultural structure erected for 180 or fewer days. All accessory agricultural structures are subject to compliance with the following, and this is important. An accessory agricultural structure erected for 180 or fewer days is permitted only in a side or rear yard, provided the structure is set back at least 20 feet from side and rear lot lines, and shall not exceed 18 feet in height. Dr. Lamont, real quick, how high were those structures?
The taller ones are probably about 16 maybe. They could be, about 16 feet maybe. Perfect.
I had a feeling you'd say that. An accessory, and if they're a little higher, you just dig them a little deeper. Right. An accessory agricultural structure erected for more than 180 days must comply with requirements of the zoning code. Okay, so we touched on that. What if it does not? Then what do we do? If it's, in fact, 20 feet high and it's going to be up longer than 180 days. Online, you can get on phila.gov, okay, you can go to the L&I website and go to the permit section. There you'll be able to find a zoning permit and another, the fire permit, the temporary tent permit, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's at phila.gov, okay? So you'll you'll fill out the application, bring it to 1401 JFK Boulevard in the concourse. That's where we're located. It's where the zoning unit's located. It's just a matter of, if you meet the set requirements, it's just a matter of filing the application so we know what kind of structure is going to be there. If it's there for longer than 180 days, as Ms. Gladstein showed you, it's no longer temporary, it's permanent. We just need to record that with that specific address so we know what structure is there. Okay? The application fee is $100. Now for the building code requirements. And excuse me again, I'm going to read from the Pennsylvania the Uniform Construction Code, which prohibits our regulation of certain structures under the construction code as follows. And this is good news. An agricultural building that is a structure used to store farm implements, hay, feed, grain, or other agricultural or horticultural products, or to house poultry, livestock, or other farm animals. The exemption does not include habitable space or spaces in which agricultural products are processed, treated, or packaged, or any place of occupancy by the general public. So the high tunnel, if not being occupied as a classroom or educational facility, or if we're not running tours through there, if we're going in to tend to the plants and remove ourselves from the location, we do not need a building permit for. So no building permit will be required. If we're going to use it to have classroom instruction or run the tours through or for whatever other purpose, then we're going to need a building permit. What does a building permit require? We're going to need plans. We need engineered, sealed building plans. And we'll have to issue a certificate of occupancy. With that is going to come compliance with the fire code regulations. 2 paths of egress, an exit sign, and in this case it wouldn't be illuminated because there'll be no electric in there. But the standards are going to be much higher than they would be if it's not going to be occupied. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember. Lastly, we have the fire code requirement. Okay, and the Philadelphia Fire Code, which is in the Philadelphia Code and Charter, subsection 2404.4, requires that, and this is mandatory for temporary or permanent structures, that we have a certification. And the certification is an affidavit or affirmation shall be submitted to the fire code official, who is us at L&I, and a copy retained on the premise at the location of the high tunnel in which the tent is located. The affidavit shall attest to the following information relative to the flame propagation performance. I don't know that the membranes, they may already have the attached certificate and a tag right on them. Do they, Doc? No? Okay. So what we need to have then is the name and address of the owners of the tent, the date the fabric was last treated with flame retardant solution, a trade name or kind of chemical used in the treatment, name of the person or firm treating the material, and the name of the testing agency and test standard by which the fabric was tested. Okay, we need to get that. Don't need plans, but we will need the certification with every application, with every high tunnel that goes up in the city of Philadelphia. Okay, again, we don't need a building permit if it's not going to be occupied. All right. We're going to take questions afterwards. That's pretty much I hear when it comes to the code piece, everybody's got a lot of grumbling going on. So I'll be around to answer questions, but I want to get on to, I want to introduce Dr. Jonathan Asoka. Dr. Asoka has an educational professional background in engineering and environmental science and policy. His research is concentrated on environmental policy, specifically regarding the effects brownfields revitalization projects have on environmental justice communities. Dr. Asoka is employed by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region 3. So we'll be back to answer questions in a little bit with the panel. I'm sure I'll get plenty of them. Can we hear it for Dr. Asoka, please?
This is going to be pretty easy for me. I'm not here to regulate. I am from the Environmental Protection Agency, but not here to regulate today. Today I'm going to talk a little bit, my task here or job or initiative for you all this evening is to give a little bit of context to where we come from in terms of looking at urban gardens, not specifically the tunnels, because I'm not an expert at the tunnels in any respect, but to give you a little bit of context for how EPA looks at revitalizing our local communities, particularly this one in Philadelphia, by using the urban garden, by looking at how urban gardens and urban agriculture fits into the urban system. How many of you thought that urban gardens was, that urban gardening, this was the first time that it had ever happened in the 21st or 20th century? Because this is not, clearly not a new thing. Our societies were built off of urban agriculture and the connection that we had between our local nature and our local community and local environment and our food sources. So at this point, we're looking at it, a lot of folks look at our urban agriculture or look at agriculture in general as a new connection that we have with food, but it's kind of been broken over time. So we heard about a lot of these high tunnel systems and how they're kind of bringing back the connection between food and people. And so we have to look at it in a little bit broader sense about how we got here. And then I want to just talk a little bit about how the EPA is bringing incentives to some of these projects, because we are not local, we don't regulate land use. We just don't do it. That's a local jurisdiction matter. But we're trying to create incentives so that we can foster more infill development within our communities so that we can facilitate these high tunnel systems and other urban agriculture systems that are going to help to revitalize and bring sustainability to our cities. So where do we start from? Well, we came from civilizations when they were just starting, where we had agriculture in place. They were right next to us. We were farmers. We were these multitaskers. We weren't single specialized folks like we are now. Like I have a job at EPA and I do a couple of different things, and you have a job as a professor or a job at L&I or building code. We didn't do that. We were multitaskers. And so we had to deal with all the different aspects of feeding ourselves, clothing ourselves, creating shelter for ourselves. And that change, our change in our civilizations came about as we became more specialized, as we became more stratified. Right now we know that we have a greater stretch in equity throughout the United States and throughout the world. We're seeing the richer getting richer and poorer getting poorer. This is kind of the generation that started way back when we were creating our civilizations. Well, what does that do? That caused us to specialize. And as we specialized, again, we started losing our connection to nature. We began to see food systems and food growing, moving outside of our local community, out of our local context, out of our local understanding, and being put into an area outside of our purview so that somebody else, a farmer now, is doing the work. So it's a cobbler that's making your shoes, a farmer that's supplying you food, a blacksmith that's making shoes, making horseshoes. We have all these different specialization tactics that we use that stratified our society and created an environment where we, again, are becoming disconnected with our food source and with our natural environs. Well, as that trend continues, and as our separation continues, we kind of lost what we're talking about here. We lost the ability to understand how to grow our own food. We lost the ability to control the sources of our nourishment. And so where we come in here, at least from the EPA standpoint, is that In the United States, as this trend continued through the Industrial Revolution, where everybody knows we started creating a lot of products. We had Henry Ford, who created the assembly line process, and how we started becoming more concentrated in cities. We created ex-urban and suburban areas. We had bigger separation between haves and have-nots. We started bringing a little bit more inequities within our communities because we have this separation from the industrialized center, which we had in Philadelphia, big industrial center. We have the Navy Yard and the water course over here, Delaware River, where we had heavy industry. And so these types of big shifts caused us, again, the point I'm going to reiterate, separating ourselves from our food sources. Well, as our industrial nature continued and we started building and putting farms out somewhere in the Amish country or somewhere like that, where our land became more contaminated. As it became more contaminated, we saw a change in economies. We saw a switch in people coming to urban areas because they wanted to have more opportunity. They wanted to gain more money. They wanted to have more mobility. We started having greater amounts of technology building up and up. So now we can transport ourselves easier. We can do things easier. I mean, the culmination of this today is instead of having to send a letter to somebody from a horse, everybody in this room, I'm sure, can pick up a device out of their book bag, out of their pocket, and call whoever they want almost around the world. And this generation of industrialism really sought, as we switch out of this era, to bring contaminated properties into our larger cities. So the industrial era, which was a profitable era for us, really was the germination of our current state, where we have these properties where we can put these urban gardens, where we can put these high tunnels, so that we can create, again, reestablish our connection to nature and to our food sources. But how do we move from there? Well, as industry changed, as we're more of a service economy, we've had globalization, again with this device that we have in our pockets and in our bags, the parts don't all come from here. Probably the parts were all made somewhere else. And so now we have transport that we have to spend energy on to get these devices over here, to get the parts for the devices, get the actual device over here. We farmed out a lot of those services and those industrial services, and we did not have, and that resulted in a lot of these industrial centers just, kind of going down the tubes, and thus resulted in some really dilapidated and economically strapped urban centers that we, in some cases see around this country. That brought on brownfields. A lot of these different forces that combined brought on these brownfields, which EPA is concerned about. Our goal with the brownfields is not necessarily to regulate like we do with Superfund sites, but to create incentives so that we can, number one, protect the environment, to determine if these areas are contaminated, to determine how we can best incentivize nonprofits, city, municipal governments to be able to revitalize these areas, to put them into productive use. So as we look at these areas, especially in Region 3 and in Philadelphia, where we see a lot of this urban gardening trend moving forward, we have really attempted to talk to communities to see how they best want to reuse their land. So our offerings are in the technical assistance area, in grants areas. I just want to enumerate some of the things that we actually offer here. Assessment grants, and these are all for brownfields. Cleanup grants, revolving loan funds, workforce training grants, and targeted brownfields assessment and targeted assistance. And we use a lot of these programs in order to help you all who are really in this business of trying to revive your own city, our own city, I'm here, our own city, with these types of technologies that we have spoken about. And our end goal here is really to create, as Mayor Nutters talked about many times, a sustainable city, where we want to be able to recycle dollars in the city. We want to be able to create better equity with its residents by having folks be able to control their own food source, to sell, to grow, to sell, to educate, to create green jobs. This is one of the programs, the Brownfields program in EPA is one of the ones that is received bipartisan support in our Congress, namely because we are trying to put these sites back into productive use so that we can make them saleable and valuable to the community. Because as we've seen, if you ride down the train, I used to take the R8 when I lived over in Germantown, you can ride up and down the R8 and you can see all these properties, all these factories that are gone, and we've seen them. Now, what are folks going to do with those properties? Well, in some cases, it costs a lot of money to rehabilitate. Some of them are too contaminated. So how do we deal with them? This is one method, urban agriculture, that we can use in order to manage these properties, in order to bring them back into productive use. So from the EPA standpoint, we're really here to serve as a tool, as an educator. We want to serve as technical assistance. We want to serve as an incentivizer for you all who are doing the work and who are thinking of doing the work to be able to actually do it, to help you out and almost get out of the way, to let you do what you know how to do. That's, at least in this program, that is our job, and this is what I wanted to be able to communicate to you all this evening. Thank you.
Well, let's give our panelists and presenters a round of applause. We're going to bring them back all on stage so that we can have a brief question and answer period. So can our presenters come up on stage? There should be 2 microphones at the front of both aisles. And you can, as soon as they get seated, you can walk up to the microphone and ask your questions respectively. So when you come to the microphone, we're going to start, we'll start over to the right and then we'll alternate. But if you can just mention your first name and ask your question, please.
Yeah, my name is Paolo Pizzata. I'm a longtime Philadelphian and a city planner. I'm massively struck by the disconnect of city policy as regards the state of Philadelphia and its needs. I think it's the 1st congressional district is the 2nd hungriest place in the country. Average household income has been declining for something like 1969. Average real household income has been declining since 1969. There's a lot of poor people. They stopped collecting names on the list of people that wanted public housing at 100,000 families. That's almost 25% of the city. So this city is very poor. It's poorly housed. It's probably hungry. And it has low income. And there's been a trajectory of decline in real average household income for like 50 years now. It's not going to turn around. This is a structural effect of globalization, of a lot of other factors. So the master plan that we just put, the zoning plan that we just put together,
could you,
the zoning plan, I'm asking the
get to
question
the
now,
question.
the zoning plan that we just put together was put together without a master plan. Consequently, all of this stuff about producing food is as an accessory, as I understand what the zoning commissioner outlined, not as a central function. Cleveland put together a master plan that actually had food growing areas. So what I would like to know is, when will the city government start to take the needs of people to eat and be housed of the population we have, not the population we wish we had?
Thank you.
Do I have to do something to turn this on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You are correct that the zoning code process began before the comprehensive revision of our master plan. The zoning code process was started through a referendum in 2007. The City Planning Commission took it upon itself to update our also 50-year-old comprehensive plan, and the citywide vision for that was completed and accepted or adopted by the Planning Commission last June. Prior to that, there were a number of plans that the city did which have had food access and sustainability at its heart. One obvious one is Greenworks, which was established several years before with multiple targets that the city has been implementing and measuring, monitoring, and promoting throughout. The comprehensive plan, the component of it that was completed in June was a very broad framework. It supports urban agriculture. It supports access to local food. And what the Planning Commission is doing now is trying to bring that down to another level, a district level, where we can make more specific recommendations about locations for urban agriculture. And just to give you an example, the first two plans, drafts were posted about 10 days ago on the website, Philadelphia2035.org, and the plan for the West Park community specifies places to promote farmers markets, community gardens, and urban agriculture. So that work is going on. You're right, it's needed. We agree with you, and we're doing it.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Clayton Johnson, and my question is concerned with, is there a process being developed or is there a process evolving that would accommodate a person as myself? If I had a plan to produce 100 permanent jobs at a location in the city, once establishing the location in which I have interest, my experience has been that the properties are either earmarked by one of the city's real estate bureaucracies, even though the property might have been vacant for 25 or 30 years. But when someone shows interest in the property, there's a sudden urgency of the bureaucracies to have that property earmarked for something else. So my concern is, if we're moving forward EPA-wise, and we're moving forward Planning Commission-wise, and if we're moving forward zoning-wise, who would I speak to, and who would I bring my concept and plans to, and have it either expedited or somehow processed without butting up against the hurdles of what I call the corrupt parties that be, or the establishments that exist, to do something that's innovative and do something that's constructive, where my vision is to have, again, 100 or more permanent jobs. But you can't do that up against the entrenched forces that, again, once you show interest in a property, again, that property becomes hands-off and off-limits.
If you're interested in starting a business, a job-creating business, our Commerce Department in the city, and I don't know if there's anybody from the Commerce Department here, has a staff, the Office of Business Services. They have a portal on their website that you can go into at phila.gov, where it says businesses, that takes you through a lot of the processes, and they have a staff that can answer the phone and actually walk through all of that with you. The city is also towards the end of a several-year process of creating a policy around the disposition of vacant land. That policy will be published, available to everybody, so you'll know what it is. The city has taken a number of steps to publish on its website information on what parcels of land are owned by whom, and they're finishing up the touches. I think in a few months it'll go live, computer program, so you can actually request property through the web. So you'll start to see a lot of that, but if you want an immediate contact, I would suggest the city's Commerce Department, and I think the number...
I can get the number. My
Okay.
question is, are my concerns valid concerns?
I don't want to address your characterizations of the
No,
city process.
I'm not characterizing anybody. I'm just saying there
You
is
used
no
some adjectives
there is
there.
no coordination. And again, just as you're saying, you don't want to address it, and that's my concern.
No, I didn't want to
I've
address
been
the
in
language
contact
that you
with.
used.
Well,
Okay.
it's not a matter of language. What it is what it is. My question is there any coordination?
Yes, there's coordination.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Andrew. I live in South Philly, and our neighborhood group's very excited for the possibility of a land bank being created or something along those lines that would give neighborhood groups access to land. But looking through the zoning code that you put up there, if we're lucky enough to hypothetically get even 2 vacant lots next to each other, that your whole frontage is under 40 feet. So what are our options with regards to being 20 feet set back from either side? Was there any thought given to smaller lots in that code?
Do you want to take that or should I?
No, you can. Andrew from South Philly. Thank you for your question. If, in fact, you do not meet the requirements set forth in the zoning code, you could still file an application with our department, with licenses and inspections, and apply for a variance, okay? The variance will go before the zoning board of adjustment because you do not meet those requirements set forth in the zoning code. You'll have to file an appeal.
Okay, so there's no,
But there is, that 20-foot setback from a lot line was if it was temporary and you were not getting a permit. So if you are on a smaller lot, you just have to observe and have the side yard and the front yard and the rear yard requirements, and some of those are smaller for smaller lots. They go down as low as 5 feet on some lots. So for a smaller lot, you should go look, I'll tell you what section, 14701, which has all the dimensional requirements to see. So you'd have to pull a zoning permit, but you may not need to make the kind of appeal that Tom is talking about.
okay, great.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Megan Maluk, and I have a question for Dr. Lamont. I was curious if you could speak to the water resourcing for high tunnels and whether there are rainwater catchment systems on the tunnels or how that is managed in urban settings.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Water is extremely important. Water and food go hand in hand. And there are water catchment systems. Tommy McCann and Teens for Good was demonstrating one of the systems that's actually in place. There's work going on at several universities. West Virginia University has a very active water catchment system program down there to catch the water and store it and then go ahead and use it for the drip irrigation. Because we use a lot of drip irrigation because it's a very water efficient system, you know, and they're using it for that. And I think that's important in the city. Otherwise, you got to tap into your municipal water source or your city water source because, yeah, the tunnel's a rainout shelter in reality. So, yeah, the more we can do with that, maybe have cisterns, you know, bury tanks for cisterns and then solar pumps and things like that, I think we'll see a lot more exciting type of systems. But it's a surface area just like a parking lot. So if we can catch the water off it, we keep it out of the stormwater, and I know Jerome's really interested in that and done a lot of work over his place, so for sure. So I think you'll see a lot more of that in the future, definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deanne?
Hi, this is a question for Mr. McDade. I'd like to know what happens to the physics, chemistry, and biology of a high tunnel on the 181st day that flips it into the higher requirement category.
That's a great question. Yeah, right. What else do I say? I don't make the rules, I just follow them.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Chris. I have a question for Dr. Lamont and Dr. Soka. Question is, the use of these lands that have been allocated that are kind of contaminated and the usage of high tunnels, how do you see high tunnels incorporated into these kind of masses that are not currently sustainable for usage?
I would say that that's the one reason that I pointed out that you would go with a raised bed system inside of it. Otherwise, the remediation of the soil takes a long time to go ahead and remediate it where you could actually farm the soil again. So the raised bed, and if you're worried about the contamination, you can put a piece of plastic in the bottom of your bed. Since you're inside the tunnel, you know, you control the moisture, but if you're worried about the roots getting down below and getting into the subsurface soil that might be contaminated, you can get around it that way. But that's the reason I always say a raised bed. Unless you can get your soil tested, shows up clean, there's nothing there to worry about, then you can go ahead and grow in the ground, so, yeah.
And we emphasize that, especially with folks who want to farm the ground and not do raised beds, you really have to get it tested prior. We have the targeted brownfields assessment that we do is actually a program where you don't have to go through the grant process, where the entity will identify a piece of land and come to EPA, basically write a letter, and we evaluate whether it's something that we look at as being a developable land that is going to have some resource advantage for the community. In fact, which I failed to mention when I was standing up at the lectern, we have two guidances that we promote: Partnership for Sustainable Communities, which is an urban farm business plan, as we talked about marketing, and Brownfields and Urban Agriculture, which is brand new interim guide for safe gardening practices, which talks about the science, some of the science that folks would need in order to start looking at how they want to farm a particular parcel of land. So we have these available. Again, we're trying to incentivize this, so we have these materials available. If anyone needed to find out what the website is for these, because I only brought a couple to be sustainable, you can feel free to ask me after we're done, and so you'll be able to access these materials.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
I got two quick ones. First, it used to be that if you had a community garden and you had an urban gardening agreement with the city, that you would get a key to the nearest fire hydrant and you'd be able to access that to water the community garden. The city stopped doing that a couple years ago, and now, right now, it's like we're encouraging people to grow vegetables and do gardening, but the question of whether the water department will open up the hydrants again has not been answered. So I'm wondering if you guys are in conversation with PBW, with the water department and the city about this.
I'm sorry, I have not been, and I'm looking to see. Do you know anything, Sarah? Did everybody hear that?
No.
Sarah, I'll just repeat it. Sarah said that you can still, there's a process to apply to the water department for a key, and it's just being a little bit more selective now. Is that a fair statement?
And how does one go about that?
You could call Joanne Donovan, or you could call me.
Okay, well, all right. The other thing is with the land use thing, it's like I know the city is still using the urban gardening agreements for if there's a vacant lot that you want to use as a garden. There's just, it's kind of like a rent, but a free, no fee rent, but there's no guarantee that they're not going to swipe it from you because somebody wants to buy the piece of the land to develop. That's okay for some of us, and for some others, if we want to do something a little bit more ongoing, it can be a real blockade. So I think maybe that might be what the other gentleman was trying to find out. With this new land bank that the city is putting together, is there going to be another option where perhaps gardens could become permanent? Thank you.
The land bank right now is proposed legislation, which still was just introduced in City Council and hasn't gone through hearings, so we're not sure what the outcome of that will be. The policy around the disposition of vacant land has been going through a lot of reviews, and that will be posted in public. And I believe that there's an understanding that there's a desire to have agreements for more than 1 year. I can't tell you what it's going to say, but I know that that point has been made loud and clear.
Thank you. Yeah, next, please.
Hello, my name's Kim. I'm a Drexel University graduate student. Thank you all so much for coming out to speak with us tonight. I've really enjoyed all of your perspectives and presentations. My question's primarily for Dr. Lamont, but I welcome everyone else's comments as well. It's similar to another question that was brought up. So one of the example sites that you had presented high tunnel construction at was at the Urban Tree Connection over in West Philadelphia. And Drexel University also has a presence at that site. Some of the researchers in our department have been involved with designing and implementing a rainwater harvesting system at that site. So it kind of goes along with the whole food-water connection and that nexus and the possibility for partnerships to come forth out of those types of interactions. I was wondering what kinds of opportunities you see for the universities within Philadelphia to engage with Penn State and also to engage with the communities afterward.
That's a good question, and I think there's tremendous opportunity. I think that all the universities in the city have a tremendous amount of expertise, like you said. You know, the engineering students, the students in the social sciences, you know, the biological sciences. I think there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships, both for graduate students. You know, Penn State, you know, has graduate students, but graduate student interactions amongst the students at Penn State, students at Drexel, Penn, you know, Temple, et cetera. So in a lot of these different areas that we're talking about, there's probably even opportunities to examine the engineering structure of a tunnel and even look at, you know, refining it even more and, you know, in the monitoring inside the environment to actually pinpoint what's going on in the tunnel on a 100-degree day and the different quadrants within the tunnel. Really mine, you know, a lot of engineering stuff that could be done. So I think there's just a wealth of opportunities. The thing I always said when I come into an urban environment, my technology part of it is probably the easiest. It's you guys that got the tough jobs. and my colleagues in Michigan and working in Detroit and Cleveland and stuff, it really is. My technology of the growing part is easy. Trying to figure out the land acquisition, how do you hold land for numerous, how do you develop a new thing where you have housing and agriculture together. That's really the challenge, you know, to do that. That's the big challenge I see in the urban agriculture around the country and in the areas that I've visited and talked to my colleagues about. Cleveland is pretty far visioning in Cleveland. And I've talked to the people there. They seem to have a pretty good vision in Cleveland of where they're going with agriculture. Because I think agriculture needs to be a permanent part of the fabric of a city. And that's the challenge. How do you make it a permanent part and not a temporary part where it's here today and gone tomorrow? And that's what you guys got to deal with. So I don't know. I'll pass the baton to you.
All right. If I could just have a quick follow-up question regarding coding. Is there anything in the revised coding to help people be able to have rainwater harvesting systems as far as downspout disconnection and
That was an
those
easy
types?
question, yes. One of the things, one of the other steps we took, and I could have put it in the slideshow, I apologize, was to allow, for example, rain barrels, cisterns, whatever, as well as alternative energy, small alternative energy devices to encroach. And in zoning terms, that means you could have them even within the required side yard or rear yard. So you can place those systems there, and they're permitted.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tyler Schaefer. I'm also from South Philadelphia. My question is for Eva. Basically, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I'm sure some people in this room are. But you can actually put these high tunnels on tracks and move them. And I was wondering about the definition of temporary structures.
That's about as original as it gets.
That was good.
I mean, first of all, the commission crafted the new zoning code, but it's Ellen and I's responsibility to administer it, and I feel bad. I feel for Tom. So, and the reason we use the 180 days is just that consistently throughout the Philadelphia code and the building code, whatever, you know, 6 months is used to define something that's temporary versus long-term. I have no idea how to answer your question beyond that, but it's very creative.
Okay.
I don't know if Tom wants
Because,
to touch
I mean,
it.
potentially it could save some of us headaches, right? If we put them on tracks and we found out it couldn't.
A tunnel on tracks is still a tunnel. It's still a
Right.
structure. You move it from location A to location B, it's still there. It hasn't gone anywhere.
Right.
And the other thing is you got to really make sure that those ones on the tracks are really tied down tight, because I know you guys don't want them flying around the neighborhood. So it's a different animal. It's a, yeah,
Okay.
you're right, but it's still a tunnel and it's still a structure.
Thank you.
Yeah, the way they exist now, I think they're 20 inches, Doug, the posts are 20 inches into the
It
ground.
depends on, the bigger ones are deeper and
Right.
the minimum probably 20.
Yeah, that would be an issue with making sure that it was tied down for
Right.
wind load. Right,
Thank you.
which could be.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Modesto, and I live in here in Center City. And it's a follow-up question on technology. I mean, I didn't see any examples of any tunnels built on asphalt lots. I mean, here in Philly, we have a lot of asphalt, and those as a structure would be nice as an alternative, especially for startups that don't have the seed money to clear out the asphalt and do that stuff.
No problem. We've done them in Harrisburg. We put them in tunnels. You saw drilling down with the drill. All you're going to do in the asphalt is drill through the asphalt until you're in the soil and drive your post down in there, so it's no problem. And you make raised beds inside the asphalt.
No, I figured the raised bed would work.
Yeah,
but
you're
it's
probably
just
getting a heat sink. Yeah, you're probably getting a heat sink off the asphalt, so, yeah, no problem.
Were you, just a follow-up question, were you concerned at all when the code official was talking about the chemical treatment on the plastic and how
Well, I'd
that-
have to go back to the plastic guys and ask them what the, as far as fire retardant materials that are in the plastic, and that's something I think we asked the plastic manufacturers, because, yeah, you got end walls that are lumber too. I mean, so plastic tends to, normally, it'll go ahead and melt a lot of times more than actually burn. So it's something we got to look at, but, you know, like I said, you got to work around these things, you know, you got to work with the group and try to figure out what makes sense. I mean, the 180 days sounds good. To me, 360 sounds better. And, you know, that's going to be a sticking point. I'm going to be honest with you, because the guys are growing year round. I mean, that's 365 days. So the 180 is nice, but maybe we got to think about how we work and encourage agriculture, and you work together. You got to work together. It's part of give and take and partnerships. But yeah, that's going to be an issue, I'm sure, and it's something that can be worked out. But you got to acknowledge that there's disagreements maybe on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, the 180 days versus 181 or more days, if it's up for 180 days or less, it's simply saying you don't have to pull a zoning permit. But it's not saying you can't have them up for longer, it's just that you're pulling a zoning permit. So.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Amy Laura. I live in West Philly. I also work at the Public Interest Law Center, and I provide legal representation to community gardeners and urban farmers, and spend 75% of my time talking about land tenure. So I would suggest maybe that's a topic for another forum. But I have a question for the folks from the city about, you know, August 22nd is this exciting new date. I'm fielding questions and letting people know about the implications of the zoning code, but what's the recommendation going into this growing season, since the new zoning code's not going to be implemented until August? So, you know, in terms of enforcement, in terms of kind of permitting and compliance, what should people be thinking about for this year?
It's a good question. I mean, the current zoning code is in effect through midnight, you know, and then on August 22nd, the new code goes into effect. And an application that's, the way the transition will happen is if you've pulled a permit, if you have a completed application, you'll be going under the old zoning code. If you don't have a completed application for a permit, then you'll be going under the new zoning code. I'm not quite sure how much more guidance I can give, and I'm not sure if you can either.
I think with our staff, since this is such a new process through the building code, we had to research this prior to coming to the meeting just because everything is so new. And I don't know that I can sit here and say that I can advise my staff that if an application comes across for a high tunnel, to use the new code. Since as of, we'll have to go to the higher authority to make sure that I can say that.
I guess would there be an openness to having a conversation about like that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it makes all the
Right.
sense in the world. It
Yeah.
really does, since it's impending legislation. It'll be here, we know when the date is.
Great.
So, and you're right, and the season is upon us. Will be upon us soon, so.
And then just a quick follow-up, you had said, Eva, that, this, in a sense, it's probably going to be a living document, the zoning code. How does that, where does the input go in terms of feedback about what's working, what's not working, and how will it evolve, or what's that process?
There are some planned check-ins, so because this is so new. So again, our website is zoningmatters.org. There's a contact us button. Feel free to use it, and we'll get the email. There's a requirement that that the city administration give a report with recommendations to city council within a year of the code to see what, amendments we might want to have, and to see what's working and what's not working. And that recommendation is going to be made by the city planning executive director, city planning commission executive director, the commerce director, the L&I commissioner, and the head of the zoning board of adjustment. So feedback can go to any of those agencies, or you can use our website. I guess folks here should just be aware, council amends the zoning code all the time, almost every week in city council, so you just may want to also be alert to that.
Okay, thank you.
Final question.
How appropriate. Couple questions. Thank you all for coming. It's been very interesting. What's the estimated cost of a high tunnel to build one?
They'll run anywhere from probably around 2,500, 3,000, all the way up to about 10,000.
Okay, and based on this new code, does that mean that chicken farming is now allowed in the city?
It does not necessarily mean that.
But if you met all those provisions, 20 feet, whatever?
There's another part of the Philadelphia Code that talks about keeping farm animals, and it's something to work on because it requires a minimum acreage, which most people will not be able to meet. So we did not undertake that as part of the reform. We researched it a little bit. If you contact us, we can share with you what the current regulations are. So we didn't contradict or change that part of the zoning code. That's something that's in the health code.
Okay. I had a lot of problems with the L&I part of this whole thing, and
hard to believe.
What's going to happen to the current high tower things that have been here? Have they been grandfathered in or something? And then, are you going to have further discussions? It sounds like a perfect opportunity to get interested parties together, because there are a lot of things in there that just seem really tough for hoop house and high tunnels and things.
Well, the first part of your question, we have had to date, that I'm aware of, was one application for the high tunnel, and that was Mr. Shabazz.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, all the other ones are illegal, and the doc's going to be getting some violations from us. This doctor right here. So we'll look into those. So whether they're grandfathered or not, I'll let you know in a follow-up conversation. You're absolutely right, though. And again, this is such a new process and it really is an important initiative, that conversations have to continue to address some of these things.
Yeah, is there any chance of having that before the deadline so that, it can all go into effect, or in a better set can go into effect by August? Or?
I suppose that conversation can happen. It's going to involve more people that sit here, obviously. So, it's the code requirements aren't set by L&I. They're set by, in this case, the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code, okay, or city ordinance and the zoning code. Some of them are building code, which are set by the state. So there's more parties than just city entities that have to be involved in this conversation.
I guess I have a question. Have you, in working in other communities, have they addressed zoning and building code issues? Because we started to look around and did not find a lot of assistance when we looked at other jurisdictions.
They, when we first started working with them, Otho Wells up in New Hampshire was the professor up there that was working on them in the 80s. And the legislature in New Hampshire actually wrote, a piece of legislation that defined high tunnels and defined what they were as they're temporary structures. They said they were temporary structures. Regardless, if they were up 360 days, they're still temporary. You could take them up, pull them up, and move them.
Relatively quick, right.
So that's why they defined it, but that was a state legislated. And we talked about that at the, with Sam Hayes when he was Secretary of Agriculture and asked about that, if we needed to go that route in Pennsylvania. Since we have, the trajectory of tunnels is like that. I mean, both rural and within RCS program tunnels now, and that even applies to Philadelphia, getting grant money to put tunnels up. So, yeah, I don't know, it's something we need to address and figure out, how do we actually define them? And the other thing is, if I'm not too sure how many tunnel producers have ever put one up with a stamped drawing done by a licensed engineer other than Jerome. I mean, in all the tunnels that I've been involved in, and been a lot of them, I don't know, but they just don't come that way. They come with an instruction kit. Now, maybe the tunnel manufacturer back at his home office has one set of drawings that he did, and it was stamped. I don't know. That's a question to ask, because if that's a requirement, you don't want every tunnel producer to go out and get an engineer to do a detailed drawing. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Well, in that case, it was being used as an educational facility.
Okay.
And it was on a deck.
Right. Oh,
So
yeah,
there was
right.
There was another component to
Right,
that.
that was a different, but
That's right.
if it's just one that's going on the ground, do you need that? No, okay.
No.
All right.
Nope.
Yeah, I know Jerome's is a separate animal altogether.
That's
there,
right.
For sure. He broke a lot of new ground on that one. No pun intended.
Well, we want to thank all of our panelists.
Excuse me.
Oh, one more question.
I don't have a question. Maybe a suggestion would help at this point. I wonder if you guys have set any goals. Say you set a goal of 100 sites that you want to do these high tunnels. There's Rotary clubs, there's Boy Scout groups. I mean, if you set up 100 possible sites and said, who wants to run these? Maybe some of these groups can come in, and it could take off really fast if you get some groups involved. And it's probably simple to do it that way. So you could have a general meeting, get some groups in there, and boom, Just want to throw that out.
Yeah, I think, and just to follow up on that point there, that's the reason that myself, I work with John Burns sitting in the front row over there. John, raise your hand. And Jerome and Heather and the people at the extension office. People, they sort of reach out to the different groups and the organizations and ones that come together and say, I'd be interested in a tunnel, and then you vet them further, what is your real interest? Is it a passing fad, or is it something you're really got passion for and a heart for? But other organizations can be involved, and we welcome that, and they can get in touch with Jerome if that's, Jerome or John or Heather in the extension, the Philadelphia Extension Office. So, yeah, your point's well taken. I think we use John and his office as a conduit for the area, for the interest of people in Philadelphia for tunnels.
So with that, can we give a round of applause for our panelists? There are two other things that we'd like to do. One, if you open up your brochure for tonight, someone should have something that indicates that you're a winner. We have an Urban Void book that we're giving out for any of you who have the winner sticker in your brochure. If you find it, let us know. We'll get back to you on that. The second thing is there will be a companion event on March the 17th. We'll have tours of some of the high tunnel sites as well as an extended workshop. So go to the Academy's website and you'll get further details. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Right.